Here's a sentence you probably never thought you'd hear. There was once a queen who literally ate her own jewelry. Yeah, diamonds, pearls, gold leaf, the whole royal buffet. And no, this isn't some weird modern art performance or a misunderstood detox cleanse. This was real, and it happened inside one of Europe's grandest palaces, where chandeliers sparkled, courtiers whispered, and one dying monarch decided the best way to survive was to chew her way through her crown. Let's settle in for this one. Loosen your shoulders, take a breath, because this story glimmers with equal parts vanity, madness, and medical confusion, all baked into one royal tragedy that tastes faintly of metal. Her name was Queen Christina of Sweden, a woman so complicated, historians still can't decide if she was a genius, a lunatic, or a bored philosopher trapped in a crown. She ruled in the 1600s, back when being royal basically meant you had unlimited power and zero sense of moderation. And Christina? She took that combination and ran with it. Imagine someone born into one of Europe's most war-obsessed dynasties, who just decided she was too intellectual for war, too allergic to marriage, and way too curious about alchemy. Because while other rulers were fighting over land, Christina was busy studying Aristotle, holding salons with philosophers, and collecting enough jewels to blind an entire court. Now Christina's life started weird, like ominous birth omen weird. Her father, King Gustavus Adolphus, died in battle when she was 6, leaving her to inherit the throne of Sweden, a child queen, a Protestant country, and an entire council of old men who thought letting a woman rule was basically asking for divine punishment. So naturally, they tried to mold her into something kingly. Christina was raised to act like a man, ride horses, debate politics, study Latin, and occasionally terrify her tutors. One observer said she walked like a man, sat like a man, and could swear in 6 languages, which honestly sounds impressive. But beneath that swagger, Christina was restless. Royal life bored her. Ceremonies, duties, expectations, she called it all the tedious nonsense of crowns. By her 20s, the court was begging her to marry, to secure an heir, to do the queen thing. But Christina? She said, and this is real, I will never marry. I am too proud to serve as a slave. So yeah, feminism, but make it 17th century Swedish and slightly self-obsessed. Instead, she filled her palace with scholars, philosophers, painters, and musicians. She wanted to turn Stockholm into the Athens of the North. And for a while, she kinda did. Her court became one of Europe's most cultured, a glittering mix of intellect, scandal, and emotional chaos. Because every single person there was a genius, or an absolute mess. Sometimes both. But as Christina's mind expanded, her body began to fall apart. You see, she was obsessed with immortality, not in the poetic sense, like leaving a legacy, but literally, not dying. She collected alchemical texts, owned a cabinet full of mysterious potions, and spent hours with court physicians debating how to extend human life. When she moved to Rome after abdicating the Swedish throne, yes, she just gave it up because she got bored. Her fascination deepened. Now, she was surrounded by Jesuits, mystics, and alchemists who whispered about transmutation, the art of turning mortal flesh into something eternal. And this is where things took a very glittery turn. Christina began experimenting with edible gold. At the time, European nobles believed gold had healing properties. It was pure, incorruptible, basically bottled divinity. Doctors mixed gold dust into tonics, called it aurum potabile, and sold it for absurd prices. And of course, if someone said, "Drink this, it'll make you live forever," the upper classes said, "Sure, I'll take 12. So Christina started consuming it, first in small doses, then more. Gold flakes in her wine, powdered pearl in her medicine, tiny ground sapphires in her tonics. Because, in her words, what is more fitting for a queen's blood than gold? Of course, gold isn't exactly digestible. Her doctors warned her gently that perhaps consuming jewelry wasn't ideal for her organs. But Christina was not the kind of woman who listened. When she got older and sicker, she doubled down. One court physician recorded her daily ingestion of powdered gems and filings of precious metals. Another noted, somewhat horrified, that she believed swallowing pearls would preserve her inner light. And if that sounds insane, remember, this was the same era when people thought ground-up mummy powder could cure headaches. So, context. Still, even by 17th century standards, Christina was overdoing it. Her digestion collapsed. Her complexion went pale, and yet she insisted the treatments were working. She said she could feel the glow of gold within her. It was probably liver failure. By the time she reached her 60s, Christina was frail, delusional, and still convinced immortality was just one mouthful away. Her attendants described her private chambers as filled with bowls of glittering dust and tinctures of every color. Some say she'd sit there late at night, holding her jewelry, whispering prayers over them before swallowing tiny fragments. When she finally died in 1689, her physicians performed an autopsy, and according to multiple reports, her stomach contained traces of metallic residue, not enough to make her sparkle, sadly, but enough to prove that, yes, she really had been eating her jewelry, because of course she had. Christina's death didn't stop the legend. In fact, it made her famous in all the wrong ways. Enlightenment writers mocked her as the Queen of Dust. Medical journals used her as a warning about royal eccentricities. And centuries later, she became a kind of tragic symbol of intellectual vanity. A woman too clever to live normally and too stubborn to die gracefully. But maybe, in some strange way, that's exactly what she wanted, because Christina always despised ordinary endings. She once said, "I would rather astonish than be loved." Well, mission accomplished. Let's float over to another royal disaster, shall we? Because Christina wasn't the only crowned head to experiment with self-poisoning as a form of eternal youth. There was another queen, just as vain, just as terrified of decay, who believed mercury baths could keep her beautiful forever. And yes, you can probably guess how that turned out.